Hello, Internet, and welcome to another blockchain vlog. I'm your host, Taylor. In this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about Bitcoin. Seems unlimited and core split, and the divide is wide. Which philosophical difference will win out? You know, I appreciate and watch a lot of blogs, or I try to at least, stay up to date on my news and opinions because, well-informed consumers is the best way forward. But I really appreciate what crypto's been doing, and Craig Grant, and I watch the Cryptoverse as well. I really like these blogs because they outlay the news. And although I was doing a bit of a similar thing, I just wanted to add a little more opinion because the news is being covered pretty well. And if I have something interesting to say about it, I think this is a good venue to do it. But yeah, Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Unlimited, it really boils down to segregated witness and larger block size. I did some thinking on this, and segregated witness is a bit like adding compression. Back in the days of Windows, I don't know, maybe 3.1 or something like that, there's a way to turn on compression for your hard drive. And it would effectively double your storage size of your hard drive, but at the cost of speed, and back in those days, computers were quite a bit slower, so it was much more noticeable. But I kind of liken segregated witness to adding compression to the blocks because it doesn't really add compression, but what it does is separates out parts of the blocks, and in doing so, creates more room for other information to fit in there. So it packs more information into a smaller space, which I think is great. And I think it's a way forward for Bitcoin. I also think that we are 8 years into an experiment, and capacity of computers and networks are greatly increased. So 1 MB, it did a really good job for a while, but I think at least need a push to 2 MB. There's some philosophical differences about why the different communities are split, but it really comes down to, money and power, I think. Right now in Bitcoin, the miners have the vote, and the devs have the voice. The users, their voice is growing through Roger Ver and RBTC and Bitcoin Unlimited and through other ways, but it's really stifled by some of the heinous censorship acts that are going on in our Bitcoin and elsewhere. And I think it's totally fine for these groups to come together and talk about what should be best for the community as a whole. Unfortunately, the result is, Bitcoin is peer-to-peer electronic cash, or Bitcoin as digital gold. I think the digital gold, proponents, the small blockers, Bitcoin maximalists, whatever you want to call them, philosophically, the people who want Bitcoin to moon through holding and store of value, I think that's a much riskier play. It might work out for them because Bitcoin's the granddaddy, it was on the internet first and so forth, but it's a really risky move. Bitcoin could have the whole digital cash thing locked up very easily since it was the first, but it seems that people are diversifying into Dash and elsewhere because of philosophical differences, governance differences, just trying to mitigate risk, lower costs. The cost of fees on Bitcoin are really high now, and there's some debate on whether or not that should continue to go up or go down. And I think it's prompting some really interesting discussion, at least within the Ethereum circles. You have Vlad Zamfir, who recently tweeted about how he feels basically due to the increase in price against other instruments that Ether as an asset being released to miners that value needs to decrease because miners get too much power in it. And in my opinion, that forms kind of a aristocracy or oligarchy where you have a minority class kind of ruling and governing the rest of the protocol. It happens in conjunction with devs because they need the software to run. But I think one of the values of proof of stake and some of the other governance systems that coins are exploring is you bring a closer unity between what the users of the system want and who's actually voting on what happens, right? And right now you've got a few different players. You've got the developers, you've got the users, and you've got the miners. And there may be some cross and overlay there. But these are kind of distinct groups, and they have different motives and incentives, and they're not always compatible. And while Bitcoin did a great job, Satoshi did a great job of kind of recognizing the incentive system and playing off of that to produce something new, we're going to have to ask ourselves, like, how is this going to work from a governance standpoint in the future when you have these different groups? One answer might be to make the groups more similar, so the users, if they hold coins and want to use that in some sort of staking process, then the users and the validators, miners, whatever you want to call them, that have a vote, those people are the same effectively. Now you start to alienate the developer community perhaps, but I think at some point you have a self-sustaining community of users who happen to have a subset of the skills of developers, so you mitigate that problem. But it's really interesting to watch from afar. I've been tweeting the popcorn emoji because I just wish I had a big old bowl and I could just eat it up. The drama is interesting to watch from afar. Try not to get too involved, but I think, the rhetoric that people are using is sometimes inappropriate, and we as a community need to be able to call people out on fudding or misrepresenting or stating incorrect facts, and do it in a way that's non-combative, right? I have my own issues with being a little confrontational with people, but I have a point to what I'm saying, and it's not just to bait them. I strongly believe what I say because I think a lot about it before I kind of tweet it out most of the time. But anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on the scaling debate in Bitcoin or Ethereum or Dash's governance. I've been kind of sketching some ideas and trying to kind of formulate this better in my head because I believe a lot of what we're seeing in cryptocurrency is an outlet for some of the failure of governance issues in our worldwide political sphere. And especially if you believe or read some of Noam Chomsky's stuff, I think that blockchain can serve as a basis in helping us get out of this kind of terrible system where there's collusion between the government and the media and the corporate welfare state enabled by the military-industrial complex, right? It's all super interesting stuff to think about and how it interplays together. And, maybe the focus of blockchain being for the people, right? The Bitcoin ETF didn't happen because, in the end, the cryptocurrency is too hold. Maybe for the people, own your own data. Maybe that is really the important aspect. And maybe that is the thing that's going to help us pull out of this governance situation, right? The situation we have governing our nation states, by and large, has ruling class elites that people are fed up with, and the populace wants to go a different direction, and that's what we're seeing with Brexit and Trump and so forth. So, maybe blockchain's a way for people to have their outlet. It's, censorship resistant, which encourages free speech. There's lots of platforms we can play with where money on the internet is now a thing, right? It's no longer pretend. We can use incentives, value-based incentives, to get people to do certain things or discourage certain behaviors. And I think this is really a powerful thing, right? Because money's back in control of the people. It's not governed by the Fed or the government or so forth as a debt system to them. But this is something that we hold and we control, and we can dictate what we want to say and what we want to do. And it's an opt-in system rather than being forced upon the people, like many laws are. So that's the word, that's the thought for today. I'll be back with news later and some more interesting projects that are in the works, which are keeping me busy. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and like it so other people can find it. And subscribe if you'd like to see some more. And don't be afraid to go ahead and share it on the forums and Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you feel appropriate. It's important that we share this information with each other, be honest and authentic about how we feel about these things, and get the conversation started. That's it. Peace.